Hey everybody, Invisiblekatana here doing a review for Ready Player One. I legitimately just got back home, threw all my stuff down and everything. Of course, this review will have spoilers, but I'll let you guys know once it gets to that point. But getting right into it, I was kind of excited to see this movie. It was one of those things where it was like, okay, that seems like it'll be pretty cool. You know, a bunch of video game stuff inside a virtual world. Video games. Video games. I love video games. More importantly, I love Back to the Future. Back to the Future. I switched shirts. I was wearing a totally different shirt. I was like, I gotta wear all Back to the Future. I didn't go super crazy because I could have wore the whole thing. I got the shoes and the jacket. I could have taken the hoverboard. I was like, I'll just wear the hat. I'll put on a different shirt. I'll go. You know, there was only 8 people in the theater that I actually ended up going to anyway. But I was I ended up getting more and more excited by the time I reserved my seat. I was like, I'm actually super excited now because all I was thinking of was Back to the Future, and it was good. There's a lot of Back to the Future stuff in there, and I was super happy seeing this thing rolling around during the race segment and stuff. It was everything I could have wanted and more. All in all, I really enjoyed it though. It wasn't super crazy where I know one of the big worries was, oh, it's this and that and just reference here and there. Tons of references for sure. Most of them are so fast it doesn't even really play into the movie itself. There are some parts where it does. You'll see t-shirts, you'll see, obviously the book is mostly based around 80s references. So that's, you get the DeLorean, Space Invaders, all sorts of stuff. Of course, there's newer stuff because the movie obviously came out, because I feel like the book is, I want to say it's 7 years old. The book is almost 10 years old. It's not that far from being 10 years old now. So there's a lot of stuff that didn't actually exist. So there's stuff in the movie where you're like, okay, that wasn't in the book, but of course they added it because it's newer stuff. Overwatch is probably the perfect reference. Certain games are newer, but definitely awesome. They kind of fly by really fast. There's some references in here that are literally a second long, and it's oh, okay, I knew what that was because I know that game, or I've seen this thing before, and it's just boom, there's that thing. You get quick glimpses. You kind of have to see the movie twice just to see all the references because they aren't really that big of a deal. It's kind of just some are way, right in your face, and they're there for a little bit, and then others is legitimately just oh, there's that thing, or I think I saw that, but I'm not sure because it was legitimately a second or less. So if you're worried about that, you're not gonna get it a lot. There are tons of references, but it's based around the actual characters knowing the references, so it's not just oh, there's that thing in the background. It's actually a part of the story, so that's actually really cool. The story itself as a whole I thought was entertaining. This weird, it's not necessarily dystopian future, but it's kind of like that. It kind of sucks a little bit. There's some bad stuff that's happened, and everybody's going to the Oasis. So really simple, and then it's just greatest Easter egg hunt in the known universe. And that's pretty much it. Everybody's inside this game. Everybody's trying to get these keys, get the egg, gain control over the Oasis, become insanely mega rich. And that's pretty much it. And then it just gets crazier from there. So all in all, definitely a fun movie. Especially if you are nerdy, especially like me. It goes into all realms of nerdiness. Because it starts off if you watch the trailers, you'll be okay, Back to the Future and video games. But there's other stuff in there. One of the trailers showed the Gundam. So there's anime stuff, there's toys, games, TV shows, movies, all of it is in there. So it's if you know your stuff, you'll enjoy this movie. That said, I definitely recommend checking it out. I'm actually gonna see it a second time. I really enjoyed it. So I'm gonna see it a second time. Probably take someone who's less nerdy to be look at all these nerdy things you don't understand. But I really enjoyed it, so I highly recommend checking the movie out. If you're not nerdy, I think you'll still enjoy it. One of the big things is that it is half live action, half CG when they're in the game. That actually all looks really good too, because that was one of the big worries where it was oh, is this gonna look weird? Where it's a bunch of it is CG and stuff. All of that actually looks really good. So I really enjoyed that. I was I'm glad this doesn't look bad. They really did it up. They threw however many millions at it. It was okay, all the effects look really good. I think it's in the trailer, but they said see this on the biggest screen possible. I think that's actually really true because it looked great. The beginning, when they first get into it and you start seeing everything, just the way it all looks, it was yeah, that looks great. The race scene that's shown in the trailer where King Kong is and all that, definitely see that as big as you possibly can. If you can see IMAX, that is good. It's just insane, and cars flipping and just tons of crazy destruction. All of it looks great. So the whole way through, movie looks really good. So I definitely enjoyed that. But from this point, there will be full-on spoilers. So if you have not seen the movie, do not go past this point unless you've read the book, in which case probably won't make that big of a difference. But definitely check out the movie. I thought it was really good. Like I said, I'm going to see it twice. I think you'll enjoy it, whether you're nerdy or not. I think this kind of is in the same realm as Scott Pilgrim, where it's oh, that's just a good movie in general because it's really silly and funny. But the video game references as someone who personally who's a huge nerd. It just makes it even better to me because I'm like, oh, I got that reference. That's Street Fighter, that's Sonic, that's this, that's that. So it's in that exact same vein where it's like it's good on its own, but it's even more deeply involved because they're literally inside of a video game. As far as like the video game references, so definitely check it out. But like I said, at this point, going full spoilers. I had not read the book before the movie came out, and I mentioned this in some random video I just did, where a friend of mine, she was like, well, why don't you just see the movie first, and then that way you can enjoy the book after, because the book is always always better. I was like, that's a good point. Instead of rushing to read it, it was just see the movie. Really enjoyed it, so now I get to read the book and get like all the extra details too. So going through it, I think they did a good job from what little I did know about the story. Going through, there's characters meeting and stuff like that. That was probably literally the only thing where it was like, okay, that seemed like a little fast, because it was like, all right, we got to hit the bullet points. They met at the race. They talked a little bit, and then boom, they meet in real life. And I was like, oh, I wish that was like a little bit longer. Would have made a little bit more sense. But at the same time, you have people who are just in video games, or in the Oasis the whole time. It's like, that almost makes sense that he'd instantly fall in love. Like it makes perfect logical sense, because you would never actually have that normal human experience. That's kind of the point when by the time we get to the end, it's like, in one way it seems super fast, but at the same time it's like, that actually kind of works from his side. From her side, I feel like it was maybe a little too fast, because she was the one who was a bit more realistic about it. And then once they met, that didn't seem to be an issue whatsoever. But I really enjoyed the way it was handled. Like I said, the visuals I thought were really good. The first race, I love that. I mean, we got to see the DeLorean, and it was this DeLorean. It was the Back to the Future 2 DeLorean. Even though they didn't show it fly nearly as much as I would have loved, they showed like that one moment when it dives under the truck, and I was really hoping during the end fight, I was like, okay, they're it's a crazy battle going on. They're going over rubble and snow and everything. I'm like, this is a perfect time to just flip the wheel sideways, and even if it stayed low to the ground, it just made more sense, because they're going over all this, crazy different changing terrain. It just made more sense to be flying. I was like, I wish it was flying this whole time. But that was really it. I was just like, oh, that was super cool. They have Kaneda's bike from Akira, which I love that. It didn't have like the trails on it or anything, but it's not animated, it's live action. But I love that. I thought that was great. All the big references. King Kong was in there, all that good stuff. I was like, oh, this is sweet. Iron Giant, the Gundam, Mecha Godzilla really surprised me. I love that. And then the Gundam versus Mecha Godzilla is just like, yeah, and that makes sense. Like, thinking about it, I'm like, I probably would have, if this wasn't already written, I probably would have wrote that at some point, minus saying it was a Gundam and Mecha Godzilla for legal reasons. I probably would have done the exact same thing, just to be like, I just want a mech to fight Godzilla, so why not? So I love that. I love Gundam, so it was just like, that was sweet. I wish that lasted longer, but of course, can't get super crazy with it. But that was cool, and that's another thing where I love the references, where it's like, those are probably the biggest three, where it's, you have Mecha Godzilla versus a Gundam, and then Iron Giant is within like the whole fight. Like he shows up early, and then they kind of fully bring him out and everything during the end fight. That's where we see like all the huge references. We get like kids fighting on the street, and they were the Ninja Turtles from the most recent movie and everything. They had Battletoads in there, which I knew from the trailer. They had the Spartans from Halo. There was like the shortest one that was like Spawn. I can't even remember who else was with Spawn, because I was like, Spawn, and that like Spawn gets my attention. So Spawn, and I know there's some other characters, and I was like, I know them too, but I forgot, and it was like I said, it's Spawn. But all the references in there. Ryu is there. It was like Ryu, Chun-Li, and Blanca was in like the dance in the nightclub that they were at. I saw Blanca in there. Harley Quinn, of course. I think they had Joker in there somewhere, and it looked like it was a different type of Joker. Like he was like really skinny and like in a suit. I don't know if that was particularly Joker. I think it was. It was just him dressed kind of different. But love the references. When Percival was like changing outfits, and he was dressed like Prince, and then like Michael Jackson. So loved all the references. I thought all the characters were done really well. One thing that this is so totally random, but Olivia Cook, I was super happy to see her in this. Like I swear for like the last 2 months, I was like, I know who that is, and it was driving me crazy. And then I think I saw a trailer like last week, and I was like, I finally get where I know her from, and that's her from Bates Motel. And I love Bates Motel. If you haven't seen it, it's obviously based off of Psycho, but great freaking series. And I was like, I know her. And because of her character in the show, there was like something very particular that was missing, and I was just like, I couldn't place it. Where I was like, where do I know her from? So I was super happy to see her like in a movie. I think she was in something else, but I was like, huge movie. So I'm like crazy like that. I get excited when I see actors from shows be in movies, and I'm like, sweet. So that was awesome to see her in it. But everyone else, I thought did a really good job. I love the action that was actually in it. The comedy was definitely good. Like I said, the CG looked really cool, so I definitely enjoyed that, and the way they kind of went through the story of this guy who was this super weird. He was like the generic nerd type, where he's this genius nerd, but he's also like insanely antisocial. He doesn't know anyone, and this and that, and kind of pushing his friend out. I thought that was really cool, and I like the way that story ultimately played out. By the time it got to the end, so really loved it all around. Like I mentioned, I'm definitely gonna see it a second time. I can't wait to see it a second time. Honestly, I actually really enjoyed it. Love the music choices, especially the end credits. Hall of Notes, perfect. Would have loved if they just flat out played. They probably couldn't do like the whole. Well, they could. It's Warner Brothers. It's not Universal, so they probably couldn't technically play like Back in Time or anything like that from Back to the Future. They could only do like the notes. But yeah, that would have been cool too. Full on Back in Time from Back to the Future, but absolutely loved it. The Zemeckis cube, that was probably my favorite reference all the way through, where he solved it. And it's like, oh, it's Robert Zemeckis, creator of Back to the Future. So that was probably my favorite reference out of all of it, because it was just like, oh, you solve it, it's the Zemeckis cube, and it sends everything backwards by 60 seconds. And I was like, that's the coolest reference, because you'd have to note that it was Robert Zemeckis. So really loved that. Like I said, all the other references were awesome. Space Invaders, I thought it was cool. I really loved the scene at the end where it's Halliday. It's the older version and the younger version, and the older one has the black shirt with the yellow Space Invaders design, and the kid is wearing a blue shirt. It's kind of like this. It was blue with the white design, but they were both Space Invaders, and I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And that was his thing. It was Space Invader. So loved that. A lot of nerdy stuff. Like by the time it got to them, when it got to like the adventure and everything, and they were talking about the first ever Easter egg, which I super nerd, so I knew that was a thing. I was like, that's very interesting. Like, I just love the story of this guy who was this genius guy, but he kind of outcast himself. He had one friend and he pushed him out. I was like, this is actually kind of sad, but it was a really good story. So love the movie all around. Of course, would love to know what you guys thought about it. So please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts, your least favorite parts, favorite reference. I don't know if you could really like anything more than I like the Back to the Future stuff, because I'm such a huge Back to the Future fan. So anything with the DeLorean in it. I did see a guy it was like a black guy, but he was Doc Brown from Back to the Future Part 2. I noticed that in the beginning. I was like, oh, that's Doc Brown. So that was super cool. There's probably a Marty somewhere in there that I didn't notice, but I was like, that's Doc Brown from Back to the Future 2. Obviously the DeLorean. So all of that was super cool. Like I said, I just wish we got to see it like flying around like a little bit more. That would have been really sweet. But love that. Love the Kaneda motorcycle. So just those are like those little references where it's like not everyone watches anime, so it's like not everyone knows what a Gundam is, but I'm sure everyone's gonna love that scene. But just seeing like a giant CG Gundam, and it looked good. Like I was like, that looks really sweet. So I love that for sure. All the references, they had a Mortal Kombat reference mixed with aliens. So I was like, can't hate that. That was just perfect. But all the way through, I had a really good time with this. Like, I got all the references. The story itself I thought was entertaining. I like the music choices. So yeah, just really good. I definitely I feel like I did when I saw Scott Pilgrim, where I was like, I really enjoyed that. I like the music, even though a lot of Scott Pilgrim was like custom music, or somewhat redone. But it was kind of the same feeling where it's like, I just get to watch something that's genuinely good on its own, good story, but also there's 100 million references, and I'm like, I get all of these, or at least most of them, and it's about all the references are video game or anime based, and I'm just like, that is the world. That's the world I've lived in, for a long time now. So absolutely love the movie. Of course, like I said, we'd love to know what you guys thought about it. Favorite parts, least favorite parts, favorite references, references that you wish you got to see or something like that. If someone like referenced something, or you heard someone say like, I saw this in there and you missed it. What's your reference that you may have missed that you wish you had seen? Definitely want to know what you guys think about it. Of course, if you read the novel, I would love to know how you guys feel they adapted it. I'm probably going to get into it after I see the movie the second time. Then I'll start to officially read the novel, because I recently got a second copy of the novel from Loot Crate, because I got my first copy from Loot Crate like years ago and I just never read it. So I got 2 copies. I have no excuse now to officially, to not read that story. So after I see the movie a second time, then I'll go through and have like the whole thing, and I'll probably do a review for that as well. But loved it. Like I said, want to know what you guys thought about it, so please put your comments down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching.